Hey everyone, welcome to the LiveCast Conversations With. On this show, my guests and I explore the bumps and the triumphs of their journeys to extract the gems from their experiences because success leaves clues, and today we're going to turn those clues into billboards for you. I'm your host, Gene Bernier, founder of Pealed Back, speaker, and coactive coach guiding leaders to ruthlessly pursue a life worth living. And on episode 85, we have Leslie Venetz on. After 15 years as a top-performing B2B sales professional and people leader, Leslie is an expert in building elite sales organizations. As the founder of Sales Team Builder, she uses her experience to partner with organizations that want to build inclusive, buyer-centric sales teams. Leslie is committed to making sales a respected profession and applies her experience as a 3X head of sales to help sales professionals achieve their personal best. Leslie, my words cannot do you justice. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Gene. I'm excited for this conversation.
As am I. So, focusing on sales, and as well, we were talking before the start of the show, you've just recently made the jump from day job to fully owning this and really powering your mission.
I have. I left corporate America a few months ago, and I was sharing with you that I gave myself a bit of space, some time to recalibrate, rest, reset, a really lovely opportunity to sort of figure out what habits will serve me that I should carry forward into this new, evolution and adventure, and maybe what habits I can leave behind now that I get to really choose who I work with and how I spend my time and my energy. So it's already been amazing.
I love that. Right away, I want to jump right into that space about what you learned about the habits that were serving you. And I think maybe we'll start with like some of those habits that you're like giving yourself a little bit of grace to be like, I'm not taking you with me on this next part of the journey.
Yeah. So, and I don't have it all figured out yet, right? I'm also giving myself space to like iterate and play with some other things. But what I have noticed straight away is a new ownership of my time and how much that reduces my stress and
Oh yeah.
how much more focused I am. And so, what that looks like for me is that I keep all of my external facing, client calls, intro calls, pod recordings, whatever it is, between Tuesday and Thursday. And Monday and Friday are entirely blocked for focus time, creative work, deep work. And I mean, the focus, obviously, because it's this it's not 1 hour, 2 hours blocked out of my corporate schedule. It's whole days. But the quality of my weekends has increased because I'm not stressed out on Saturday because I feel like I need to start preparing for the week on Sunday. And then I'm not stressed out on Sunday because I'm already thinking about all the things I need to do when Monday comes. So that's one thing that's made a huge difference. And, I would say beyond that, just like trying to lay off myself a little
Oh,
bit. Like, it's okay if I want to do a soul cycle ride in the middle of the day. It's okay if I just
yeah.
powered through a bunch of work and I want to stop and go for a walk, listen to a podcast, read my book for a little while, and not feeling guilty
Oh yeah.
about doing those things.
How was stepping into, I guess, like identifying where that guilt was coming from some of all that? Like you hearing you say that, be like, man, I did that yesterday, and it is like super freeing.
Yeah, it is. I think some of it is internal, like some of it's just that like good old Catholic guilt that my grandma shoved on. So I think some of it's internal, right? If I'm not busy,
Yeah.
then it's like there's something bad with that,
Cool.
right? And I
I
know
think
I'm not alone in that feeling.
you are definitely not alone in that, right?
Yeah.
Like I think we could do a whole show around what that busy badge and like how it is like it's like we're all trying to compare our busyness to each other. Look how busy I am. I'm worthwhile. And like
Mhm.
that's like I don't know about you, but like for me that's a soundtrack that played really hard for a long time, and it's a hard one to break.
Oh yeah. And it's doubled down by then having spent all this time in corporate America where it's the person that maybe shows up first and stays late that gets rewarded, not necessarily the person who accomplishes the most or connects with the most intention. So yeah, it's a lot of like societal, cultural, corporate America narratives that busy is best. And having to pull back from that to realize that I can work with more thoughtfulness and more intention and get the same, maybe even more accomplished in a much shorter amount of time.
Yeah. So is this a journey you started pre, your 2 month space? Is this something you'd started to like identify within yourself going, I don't know if I'm doing the right things right now, or like the things that I can get the most done out of it? Like, at what point was like that first piece of that aha moment going, there's something here?
Yeah, I really think it was when I started the business back in 2018. And it was very much tied to why I started the business. I had come out of two extraordinarily toxic work cultures, like just rife with toxicity and bro culture and hustle culture and sexual harassment, like all of the bad things.
Oh, you had all the check marks.
You
had the startup checkbox. Yes, you startup bingo, we call it.
And went from those back-to-back really sort of traumatic environments into a startup environment where I was working like 80, 100-hour weeks. So went into a different form of toxicity and burning myself out, like burning myself to the ground. And I realized that was not working for me, like really wasn't working for me. I was depressed. I was anxious. I was tired. I was like not connecting with the people in my life that mattered most because I didn't have energy for like those simple phone calls or happy hours. And so that was, that was a little over 5 years ago. And that's when I started my own journey with figuring out what good looked like. And it's been a good journey, but I have to admit, it's a pretty big pivot when you go from like practicing mindfulness and trying to be centered and aware in a corporate job to owning your own time and getting to explore what that looks like in a much different way.
Oh, 100% right. Because now you're in control of it. And does this resonate? Like, it's like a little bit of be like, well, now I get to prove this. And then it's all sudden like, oh no, I have to prove this.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I mean, I'm still like, I'm very, very hard on myself. And so I'm like very much trying to have constant self-talk that like, it is okay to continue to make mistakes on this journey. Like it is okay to get things wrong and learn from them. It's just okay. Like what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? Like I have a couple the worst thing. Maybe it doesn't work out and I have to go back and get a sales job. Like I love sales. So there are some elements of like, oh my gosh, it's real. I really need to prove it. And also some elements of like, it's okay to like be patient, be humble, show up intentionally, and it will happen.
Oh, 100%. Right. And there's like that component of like, I think, a lot of people that get into the startup world and like wanting to do the side business and launching, like it's going to happen overnight. And I don't fault it because there's a lot of promotion that says in 90 days you could be making $1 million too. Be like, it's bullshit. Like that it's not how it works, right? Mm-hmm. And if you want to do it in a very healthy way, maintainable way, you're looking to build a business that, your business has already been running for 5 years. My assumption is you'd like it to run for another 5 or 10 years. And to do that, the heart of it needs to be in good shape.
Yeah. It's interesting because I got this insane job offer right before I decided to make Sales Team Builder my 100% focus. And it was the job offer that I thought I wanted and needed for the path I thought I was on to become a chief revenue officer. And I feel like I'm on a different path, but similar journey with Sales Team Builder, where immediately when I said it was going to be my full-time focus, the question was, so you're going to scale it, you're to the moon. And I read this great book that a friend recommended to me called Company of One. And it was really about, have you read it?
I have the Audible, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You're like, yes. And so you know that the concept is building better, not bigger.
Yeah.
And I love having an alternate narrative that when you are a founder, it doesn't have to immediately be like, how can I make this bigger? How can I scale? That it's okay to just focus on better and quality.
Yeah. 100%, right? And it's again, I think it ties right back to this, like the space you gave yourself and this permission to build your lifestyle, right? Like, and it comes right again, so it's right back to owning your time. Be like, your Monday and Fridays, it's like, what a great time to like just dive into the focus without the context switching. Whatever comes of it comes, and you've got your 3 days in the middle to do it, and you still get to enjoy your weekends. Some people would like sell their mother for that type of like experience, and I was going to use the word freedom, but like it comes at a price, and it comes at the work being done, and everything else is like how powerful of a spot to be in, and like what an opportunity.
Yeah, it is a freedom.
Yeah.
I mean, that it's a privilege to have worked for the 15 years, to have built this business for 5 years, to be in a position to be able to do this. So it's not without the,
Yeah.
it's not without the work and the effort, but it is a privilege. And years ago, when like I was first kind of figuring out what the business should be, because it's like been a couple iterations. And at first I was like,
Yeah.
I know I want to help women in sales. I don't know how to do that. Like, I'll just share my story and connect with people. My mentor was like, well, what is most important to you? Like, at the end of the day, what's the number one thing that you want to achieve? Like, is it money? Is it like a big house or a fancy car? I was like, no, that's definitely not it.
Yeah.
And when we talked through it, it was like, I want the freedom. I want the freedom to be able to travel. I want the freedom to be able to, kind of live that digital nomad lifestyle,
Yeah.
or be back home in Montana with my family, or like not take external calls before 10 a.m. because I like to have 2 cups of coffee before I chat. And I mean, those like, some of those things might sound small, like they might sound like tiny changes, but that freedom, I don't know, it has like carry on, it has ripple effects.
100%, right? Like, because as you're talking about it, like you're smiling, you're everything about you is like excited about that, versus going to go to work today, or oh good, I get to like rush through commuter traffic, or like in the last 2 years that commute's been from our bedrooms to our house offices, but some of that is changing, and you might not be in a total position that has all those alignments to it, because you get to come at it from this place of like just pure, like right in this moment, at least I get the sense of enjoyment from it, be like, and that's the ripple. Like it I think from what I've learned, from what I've spoken with other guests, is like, it's not so much what you do, it's how you do it and how you bring yourself to it.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. I was recently writing a post that I sort of hilariously, well, I thought it was funny, titled "The Tortoise, the Hare, and the Hypocrite." And I was talking about how so much of what I share in my message right now is about mindfulness and going slow and mental health and boundaries. But I had to go really fast for a lot of years to like get to the point where I get to go slow. And I think that this next generation of sort of young professionals is figuring that out a lot earlier than maybe you, but definitely than I did.
Yeah. I think there is a big shift, right? In what's happening and what's coming out from it, and especially in the last 2 years, it's just like the older group, like, I'm 42, and like I know people 10 plus 10 minus that were all part of like this like hustle culture, and like the end of like command and control, and now some of them taking a little bit longer to go, mental health's important? You mean like I'm not supposed to feel like this all the time, like on the verge of like anger or tears, or like just that's not normal? But like, no, it's not right. It's normal, unfortunately, but it's not how you're meant to operate. And
Right.
being able to see that and learn from it, and seeing that the younger group is learning these lessons sooner, is like, that's the legacy. That's like that's what to learn from all of this. And now being in a position to have been there, experienced it, and go, here's the transition, and now how do we help now accelerate where these conversations can go, and how do we bring more value? And it's not just about dollars in the bank account. You bring value, the money shows up.
Absolutely. It's so true. Like a message of it doesn't have to be this way. There is a better way. And I think like as a sales professional, that's so true for other sales professionals and sales cultures. And it's also so true for the way we're interacting with our buyers.
Yeah.
Like we don't have to use those, like the historical ways that society has, I guess, sort of like pigeonholed sellers to be high pressure and aggressive, and we're only hiring like warrior ninjas, and like we get to be this, I think, new evolution of the profession that can lead with empathy and curiosity, and like some of the words that were in your bio, like playfulness and curiosity and creativity, and that just makes it so much more enjoyable.
Well, and even in your own, like you talk about being building buyer-centric sales teams, like how do you go about training for that? Like, is it focused on the relationship? Like, what is your definition of a buyer-centric sales team? Because we could still say those ninjas are very buyer-centric because they need it, but what does it mean in your new context?
Yeah, I think the simplest definition is making it about your buyer instead of making it about you. And how many sales emails have you gotten that start with, I am Leslie, I'm the blah at blah, and we do, right? Like that's if you look at your inbox, that's probably 8 of the last 10 sales emails that you got. And maybe the 9th one is like, I read on LinkedIn that you are the founder of, and I'm like, okay, that's still not it. Like you just regurgitate, like that's still not it. So how can you make it about your buyer? How can you make it about them in a way that is valuable, in a way that's pertinent, in a way that is relevant, that is going to bring something to them? Like if they have given you the privilege of taking your cold call, of reading your email, of scheduling that demo, they better walk away from that having gained something.
Ooh. I love that. So it's like you're I don't know if you've ever heard of like Sandler. No, this isn't slam against them, but I've got friends that have gone through their sales course back in the day. They always talked about spilling the candy in the lobby. I think there's a lot of power in, like, if you can give them a little bit of that candy and spill some of that in the lobby, right? If you're value first, that's, I think, a good place to start building some rapport, at least from what I'm hearing from you.
Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of leading with deposits before asks. I'm a big fan of taking the time to earn the right to somebody's inbox, to earn the right to their calendar, to earn the right to their business. And like the buyers feel it, right? When you show up and you actually show up with curiosity, like genuinely curious. And you see the effects, like it tightens up sales cycles. It increases the dollar value of deals. So there are some like very positive bottom line revenue impacts from being more buyer centric. Like to your earlier question, I think the number one type of work I do besides those tactical pieces, it's the mindset shift. Like so many of us for so many years came from environments where KPIs ruled. And it was just about how many, dials you could
dial for dollars.
That's exactly right. I've used that phrase as a manager. I've been like, phones to ears, like smile. And I've used those cheesy phrases and learned the hard way that they don't work and figured out what works better. But yeah, I mean, I love it. I love this whole evolution. I mean, the pandemic, I think, was an extraordinarily difficult time for everybody, but it was also for many people this opportunity to reevaluate what's important, to maybe test some new ways of communicating with their clients, with their buyers, because there was space to say, well, maybe this is the time to try something new. This works? Great.
And I don't know, like the question that comes up is like, in the dialing for dollars days, like coffees for closers is like, what is, I imagine it's the same amount of work, but like a lot less like throwing like spaghetti at the wall and hoping something's going to stick if you're focused on building that relationship versus, you know, just the what how did you matter today? How many dials did you send? How many cold emails did you send? So how does the shift from like a KPI centric sales team to like a buyer centric relationship centric team, how does the leader impact that and help build that culture while still holding some like accountability for the team, like in a sales team at the end of the day, closes help bring revenue in for everybody's family to eat. So how do they still associate the end goal of that without like making it into a detrimental, like, oh, you're not worth it if you don't hit the dials?
Yeah. So I think part of it is focusing on the metrics that do matter. Like to your point, the metrics that matter are the revenue metrics. So like what is actually impacting that revenue? And it's probably going to be things a little bit like, what is the quality of the intro of like the disco demo meetings being set? Of those, how many are converting to opportunities and how many are we losing because it just wasn't the right timing or the budget wasn't there, not because we don't understand our product market fit or we're not reaching it. Like how can you dig in deeper to those metrics that matter versus focusing on the vanity metrics of like open rates or number of calls made? And that doesn't mean that those aren't still useful metrics, but then I would even challenge leaders to figure out each rep's strength. Like I work with a lot of BDR and STR teams, and there are some people I work with that are so strong on the phone. Yeah. So when we think about the types of sequences, the types of cadences that we're going to have them execute, they're going to be more call heavy. That person's going to have more calls in their workflow because they convert higher on calls than they do on their emails or on their social touch points or vice versa. Right. People that have taken the time to build that, you know, great social network. So their posts are getting the traction. They're almost like their own little mini lead, you know, like demand gen funnel. Yeah. So great, we're going to have that person focus more on those touches. So how can you create that balance between meeting those bottom of funnel KPIs to some extent without making them like so generic and so automated that you lose some of that like kind of humanity and some of that personalization from a rep standpoint.
Oh, interesting. So you're finding everyone's agreeing on what like the OKR is, like here's the outcome we're all working towards, and then instead of going factory line, let's go hit it, you're like, okay, what part do you play really well into it, and then leveraging that because it's an important piece of the whole thing, and then all of a sudden it becomes this big team game versus a bunch of solos.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of like hitting it?
Yes. Yeah. But I also had somebody that I had a conversation with a couple of weeks ago, and they wanted to do like they wanted to spam an email list of kind of like tens of thousands of people that weren't opted in. And they wanted all of their SDRs to be on the exact same sequences, period, no deviation. And somebody else was going to write the copy, and they didn't want the SDRs to have any input on that, no opinions, no feedback. And I was like, you know, it's not us. I'm just not the right person for you. So I think for the right clients who are creating the culture that allows those behaviors to be safe and to be rewarded, and like where ownership is part of the culture, where that like entrepreneurial spirit and creativity and curiosity is part of the culture. Great. I don't think everybody is there yet. So I don't want to make it seem like, oh, sales is so evolved. There are still so many companies and so many cultures that have a long way to go.
and they're on their own journey, right? Like, and at the end of the day, the market will respond in both like employees and clients if you're doing the right things. And especially I think as that's more becoming an important thing, is like then defining within your own company culture, what do we agree is to like the right things for our company, because the different companies and the different groups of people are going to have different values. But if you can ever get everybody on board with that, well, then they're all rowing in the same direction regardless of the tactics they're going to take. And is this a healthy, you know, and creative and curious place to be?
Well, and you see folks like RepView that are really talk about pulling back the curtains, that are really pulling back the curtains on what the culture is like, what the, how much ownership people get, what percent of reps are to quota, what the actual like average OTE was. And so not only do you see the market responding from a buyer standpoint, but like you said, now employees know who the best companies to work for are because of folks like RepView and the work they're doing. So the cream will rise to the top. Is it a cream? What rises?
I think it's the cream that rises
Bubbles?
to the top, right?
Something is good. The good stuff.
The good stuff rises to the top, right? Like the whatever refinement process you need, the good stuff's at the top.
People are in the comments right now being like, "Oh,
Can it with the analogies, right? But they're important and they actually help pull everything all together.
When you nail them.
Yeah. And this too is just about the evolution of it, right? It's never done at the end of the day. Like I think we talked about earlier is doing the work is like you're always doing the work. There's no end point. There's just like milestones of celebration and then new milestones to go hit.
Yeah. I mean, I love that sort of idea or process of continuous improvement.
Yeah.
And getting to be a learn-it-all and getting to be just like somebody that constantly is absorbing new information and new perspectives and being exposed to other people's lived experiences and trying to get just a different, wider worldview.
Yes.
That's fun.
Oh yeah, 100%. How do you incorporate like continuous improvement into your new business that you've relaunched, right? So what does that mean for you on that weekly basis?
Yeah, I'm a huge input person. So I am voraciously consuming information as often as I can and then testing it and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And then I'm feeding that back either directly to clients or via TikTok or via LinkedIn posts.
Yeah.
So like in practical terms, I read a lot. I read a lot of sales and business books. I'm hosting a business book club this year, which is super fun. I spend a lot of time talking to my peers who are also doing it, just to say, like, did you test this? Did it work? What worked? What didn't work? What should I be thinking about that I'm maybe not thinking about? Or what's the roadblock that's ahead that I haven't quite seen yet that I should be preparing for? So really leaning into my networking, my community to learn from them. I'm also a big fan of certifications. That is how my brain works. I know that is not how many people's brains work, is that sort of like training or consumption of information, but it works really well for me. And I'm also a fan of anything that like I can gamify or has a reward at the end. So even though it is like a totally meaningless certificate that literally nobody cares about, like not even my mom, I'm like, oh, I did it. So I'm constantly, I like taking the courses, reading the books, learning from the community, figuring out what works, figuring out what doesn't, and then trying to summarize that or synthesize that and feed that back to my clients and to my network.
Well, I think it's incredible when you can be in a position that you're open to absorbing and learning all of that, because some people get stuck in that analysis and just info gathering. But from what I'm hearing is like you're able to take that info, figure out how to disseminate that, and then share it back, take all of this and be like, here's the gems back to your crowd, and here's the places we're going to experiment with, and then feeding that back into the hopper and continuing to do this. Like, oh, sounds like you're very good at the Tony Robbins talks about continuous and never-ending improvement, and a big part of that is that experimenting and figuring out like, what does it work? Is it okay for it not to work? And if it is, what can I still learn from this? How does this bring more value to my clients at the end of the day?
It's so true. I like take action as one of my big mantras. Like you have to do it. You have to take action. You have to try it. And like a failure isn't a failure. You learn something from it. Or like in
Yeah.
sales, I always frame it as like rejection. If you get off a call and somebody doesn't buy from you, it doesn't, you don't have to frame it as rejection. You can reframe it as, well, what were you able to teach them, or who else could you introduce them to, or are you able to point them to a competitor that can solve that? Like there's
Right.
a win that can come out of, I think, everything, pretty much everything. So yeah, I think that there is no such thing as failure. Everything is like worth learning, testing, and trying. But there's some really interesting psychology around the way that our brains work, that we trick ourselves into thinking that we are farther along than we are. So like a good example is you like see a really interesting TikTok video on something that you want to cook, and you add it to your favorites. And so your brain has tricked you into thinking that you're like way further along into having accomplished that. Or you want to read a book, and so you add it to your cart and purchase it, and your brain has tricked you into thinking you've done more. Or maybe even more simply, like you read a LinkedIn post and you're like, that's great, but then you don't ever do anything with it. Like it's this constant consumption of knowledge without the take action piece that I think can kind of be dangerous, because we're tricking ourselves into thinking that we're doing something more than we actually are.
That resonates really loudly, and I've heard that shared before, and I've experienced it, where you start to think about that end goal and you paint the picture really clearly in your mind. And it, for me, sometimes if I get too clear on it, it's almost like my brain goes, "Oh, we visualized it," and it doesn't tell the difference between what's happening in the real world versus what we can visually explain to it, right? So it goes, "Oh, we did it. Good work. High five. On to something else." Be like, "No, now we got to go build the to-dos. Now we got to take, the massive action step towards it." It'd be like, "Oh, we're not there yet? No. Oh, okay. We'll know when we get there then." Sure, just keep taking the steps until we decide that's a different spot to be in. But right, like same thing is like sometimes you read that book or you put it on your wish list, be like, that felt good. I did the thing. Be like,
did you? I love how you call out like the mini milestones or the mini goals that get you to the big goal. Cause I'm still a huge fan of like backcasting my goal. At the end of the year, I'm going to have, done XYZ. It's like, I like that visualization.
Yeah.
But I find that it only works because I can break it down, like, especially like as an individual contributor, your quota at the end of the year, your quarterly quota. But have you broken that down month by month? Have you broken that down week by week? Or even maybe if you're newer to sales, like, have you broken that down day by day? And maybe that does include, I need to make at least 30 phone calls, or I need to add at least 10 new people to my sequences. And how can you break it down enough so that for you, those are like the small mini milestones that keep you going forward towards that bigger achievement?
Oh, 100%, right? And then still finding the ways to like find the joy and the excitement in all of that as well, right? Like as soon as I started saying that, I'm thinking about your daily dose of sales inspiration stuff, which I'm now going to remember to drop into the comments.
Yes.
So actually drop a little bit of like share with us about the daily dose of inspiration for those who are like maybe getting a little bit stuck in the whole like, oh no, what next, or why am I doing this is probably even part of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we know that a positive mental attitude is important. I mean, particularly in sales, it's a tough job. You face a lot of rejection. So being able to show up with that positive mental attitude is critical. And like on the other side of that, I know I have not shown up in the right headspace for calls, and that I have caused the deal damage, maybe even lost deals because of it, right? Like there's a real revenue impact to not being able to choose your attitude. Everybody I think probably knows James Clear's Atomic Habits. It's one of the books that is on my business book club list this year. And so it was sort of like sitting off to the side of my desk. And I had these 2 months to just sort of like be free and be creative. And I thought about the 30 days to create a new habit. And what came out of that is this, I have one. is this daily dose of sales inspiration. So it's this like super cute bottle, and you shake it out whenever you're maybe feeling like a bit of a slump, or maybe you do it at the beginning of the day every day to sort of set an intention. And you open the little capsule. Open this one, and we'll see what it says. I hope it's a good one. It says, "It's okay if work feels like a family. It's also okay if it doesn't."
Ooh,
and it's just
that's
like
a
a
good
little
one.
something to like make you have a thought, or add some positivity or some mindfulness, or some of them are kind of funny, like go update your CRM, future you will thank you for it. So it was just it was so fun to get to do something like creative with my hands, which is not what I usually get to do. It was so, they're just so brightly colored. It was just fun to like have them around as I was kind of creating and iterating the product, and ordering the wrong things and making things that didn't work as I figured out what did work. But at the end of the day, like, you don't need the daily dose of inspiration to have that positive mental attitude. It's a nice, like, fun, physical thing. But like, how can you show up every single day and choose your attitude? Like, do you put on your theme song? Do you watch an inspirational video? Do you do a meditation? Do you like read a cheesy quote? Like, I kind of do all of those things. So what is it for you that helps you show up, choose your attitude, and then, be present, be mindful, be positive?
Yeah, and I love that you've used that word. You've used the word choose numerous times throughout our call today, and it's just like, you're right. Like, it comes down to a choice, and you can choose to do all the little bits, because there is no silver bullet. And just like your daily dose of inspiration pills is like, it is part of the dosage that you need to take to do that, because if not, it does have like bottom line impact, be it in your family, be it at work, be it in your friend circle, whatever it is, it's going to impact. Because just like we talked earlier about, it's the how you show up, that's the ripples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And those small mindset pivots, or even like language pivots, make such a big difference in terms of like what's going on with our neural pathways. Like, instead of saying I have to, say I get to. Like, instead of saying I'm sorry, replace it with thank you. It's like, I know they're just these small nuances in language that probably don't sound like they would make that big of a difference, but you are leaning into choosing your attitude. And then there's like crazy stuff your brain does where it literally can create new neural pathways to bias us towards positivity. Not to be too big of a nerd, but it is super cool stuff.
Like the brain plasticity stuff that is coming out, and the more that we're learning about that, we've known for a long time, we're not truly a fixed state from birth. It's like, this can all change. And again, that magical word, that choice. So you can choose to be growing, or you can choose to be declining. Like, the Slight Edge book, another great business book, but it talks about all like the little things that happen. Is like, here, basically, here's the chart, and you can either do the one little thing every day and then watch it go off the chart, or you can not do the one little thing and the chart goes down this way. It doesn't go flat. Like, we're either growing or we're declining. That's just how life on this planet seems to work.
Oof. Yeah, isn't it? Isn't it though? But I mean, there's something empowering about that, right? Because we do have the ability to affect change in our lives, and it doesn't have to be this big dramatic thing.
No.
It can be this small, tiny thing that we just do with consistency.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
And it's about, like, in the day-to-day experience of it, you have like that hit of all the good chemicals in your brain that make you feel good. But long term, it's a long term game. It's not a day game. It's not a week game. We're talking games of decades. Are you willing to play that long, knowing if you keep doing those things, they do stack, they do compound, and all this incredible stuff will come out for it.
Yeah, I recently became a published author. No big deal. No big deal. One of my co-authors, Amelia Taylor, who folks should follow on LinkedIn, her chapter introduced me to this concept of marginal privilege, which I really liked. And the sort of gist of it is that your sort of your story, your history is written out, but there's all this space in the margin for you to claim back.
Yeah.
And I just like it's visually, I could kind of picture myself like going into my story and writing like, and then she, and just sort of reclaiming your ownership and changing that narrative. Because you can't change the history, right? Like what's happened has happened. Your story is what it is, but how you view it and what you do with it, that you are in control of.
That's a powerful visualization. Be like, and it ties back into those little things. Like the margins isn't big, but if you can make the right small little changes, it tweaks the rest of the story.
Yeah, I really liked it. It really resonated with me. And it's not that it's easy. So I don't want the audience to be like, these people, like this is tough and difficult work. Like I've spent years in therapy. Like I have like this is, it's not easy. It's not easy. No. That's probably just a good statement to put out there. You're not going to change overnight. You're not suddenly going to wake up tomorrow and go from like a cynical position to this like positive position. But like if you put in that, little small consistent action every day, I think it's like a really joyful path to send yourself on.
Oh, 100% agree with you on that. And you're right. Building momentum takes time. And it's just like all those little pushes on the flywheel. Eventually it starts to spin down the road. But that first part is like, there's that commitment. There's that willpower to be like, I got to spin it again today. I got to spin it again today. And then all of a sudden, it's getting a little bit easier. This isn't too bad. And then it takes off and it will power itself. It's just the consistency is the key.
Yeah. So true.
So at the start of it, remember I said I was going to look up at some point and realize we've blown past 40 minutes?
What time
I did it. It's already 43 minutes into it, so I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything you'd like to give a shout out to before we jump into the last question?
Well, thank you so much for giving a shout out to the Daily Dose, because I'm like literally obsessed with the product. I'm so jazzed about it. I'm so jazzed about it, in fact, that I hand cut and hand roll every single one of them. So I hope people love it, because I do. So thank you for that. I mean, certainly if anybody is looking for fractional sales support, I also do this awesome interactive coaching workshop. That gets rave reviews, not to, blow my own horn, but if anybody
blow your own horn, that's all right.
If anybody knows somebody in their networks that is looking for that type of support, obviously I'm just a brand new founder over here growing a business. But no, this was a great conversation. I really love the direction that it took, and I hope that at least one person listening was inspired to make that small change in their own life.
I hope so as well. All right, so before I let you go, I ask everybody the same question. We jump into my time machine. We go back 10 years. When that door opens, what's the one piece of advice you'd give to yourself?
Oh, run away from the job that you have right now. It's toxic and you don't even know it, and you won't know it for many years, and it'll do so much damage to you until you figure it out. Run away.
Run away.
Take a job that you think is below you. Let your ego go. Just get out of there.
So run and let the ego go, and it will eventually be all right.
Yes. That was a sharp left turn from like this message of positivity. They only figured out how to do this because there were, the peaks and the valleys, and I figured out what was important by figuring out what good didn't look like first.
Yes, we got to understand we don't know the light if we don't know the dark, and vice versa, right? So I love it. I've never had anybody tell themselves to run, so it's a brand new piece of advice.
Just keeping you on your toes, Gene.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being the guest on episode 85 today. This was a great conversation, and hopefully not the last of them. And to everybody else, thank you so much for watching. I'm Gene, and this is the LiveCast Conversations With. Until next Wednesday, we'll see you then. Bye, everybody.